It's interesting, to think that I've done over 331 high schools in 22 different states, and for the most part, I could not stand public schools. Why, you might ask? Because I knew that what was being taught day after day wasn't always the truth, and boy, was I right. 5 days a week being delivered over to the school system to be raised up by complete strangers? How does that work? Well, when you're raised up without a father, your mother's always with her boyfriends, you're on welfare and have no one to come home to, you're misunderstood and not only insecure, but as lost as could be. I can see now that I was a perfect target for what they wanted to teach me. But still, I had to ask the question, why would I be the one to do high schools across this country? My whole life always trying to find my purpose. Who could possibly understand? Who could possibly understand?
Here we go. We're in Arkansas right now, Little Rock. And I've never seen this in a school before, so I'm going to let them do it to you, okay? How about that, guys?
Get this thing sold up! Say, man! Hold up! Oh, bro, got this thing sold up! Oh, bro! Oh, bro! Oh, bro, got this thing sold up! Yeah!
One thing to note, folks, is that I never got into so much trouble for doing the right thing in all my life. The fight for this generation is my war, and boy, oh boy, are they ever worth it. And now, everything seems to make perfect sense. It has been said, where there is darkness, crimes will be committed. The guilty one is not merely he who commits the crime, but he who caused or allowed the darkness. As Americans, we need to understand that the only light that the youth have or the young have is the truth that's been given to them. And in America, we can see clearly what happens when they're robbed of that light and the truth. Now, folks, back in April 20th of 1999, an event took place in our country that will not soon be forgotten among the American people. Two young men walked into a public high school in Littleton, Colorado, and shot 12 students and one teacher dead. Now, when I heard of this tragedy, I knew that I needed to respond and to get to our young. I knew that I had to fight to get to them, and I also knew that they were worth fighting for because I was one of them. I noticed that people were running from the schools rather than going to them. And it wasn't enough to complain about what was going wrong, because I knew that where there was wrong, I had a responsibility to right that wrong, not only before God, but also before man. But I also had to find the answers to give to this generation, and the only place that I could turn was the foundations that our forefathers had established. The first president of the United States, Mr. George Washington, said that religion and morality are the essential pillars of civil society. And obviously, the essential pillars of society, religion and morality, are what is under constant attack in our civil society today. I found that what Noah Webster had said was right on for our times when he warned long ago that the education of youth should be watched with the most scrupulous intention. It is much easier to introduce an establishment of an effectual system than to correct by penal statutes the ill effects of a bad one. In other words, prevention is better than cure. The education of youth lays a foundation on which both the law and the gospel rest for success. Now, what's missing then? The law and the gospel, the 10 commandments, and salvation by Jesus Christ. That would be liberation from sin. Remember this, please, that law detects and grace conquers. If there's no law to detect the sin, the transgression of God's law in 1 John 3:4, then there's no need for the grace to conquer. John 1:17 says, "For the law was given by Moses, grace and truth came by Jesus Christ." But without this knowledge, the bad system begins to come forth in 1962, and so it did. In my war, I will show you the fallout, what is being dumped on our young today. I will show you your departure from our God and our Judeo-Christian principles in which our forefathers had established. In this documentary series, My War, I will show you what the answers are. That is, how the light exposes darkness, truth exposes the lie, education exposes indoctrination, and how love exposes hate. I will hit topics from Hollywood, media lies, republic versus democracy, corruption, our most awesome veterans, education versus indoctrination, what love really is, how you reap what you sow, justice and judgment, drugs, alcohol abuse, sex, tragedy and triumph, smoking, influence from the movie stars, choice versus sickness, liberty, the price of liberty, gun control, the heart of America, our Bill of Rights, the military's oaths, and of course our children. Also a couple school fallouts where the assemblies were actually shut down for teaching the Constitution and moral issues of the day. I will combat the lies the media tried to throw on us with actual footage from the reports on my assembly, and what they didn't know was that we were filming them as well. I will also teach a natural lesson so you can understand spiritual matters. I will bring in the international band Junkyard Prophet so you can get a taste of who we are all the way around. And P.S. Junkyard Prophet was the second best unsigned band at POD because Junkyard Prophet said no to the label offers and yes to you, the students across this country. That's why we were second. And all of these consist of the topics being explored in My War. Finally, we can teach what we know, America, but we can only produce who we are. And what our young are being subjected to is not the end that we want them to become. As King Jesus puts it, wisdom is justified by your children. So let's not find ourselves complaining about what we are responsible for, because the mirror will not lie in what it reflects. So let's take a look.
I am a member of the upcoming generation, the one after Generation X, that has not yet been given a name. So far, it appears that most people are rallying behind the idea of calling us Generation Next. I believe I know why.
The older generations are hoping we will mindlessly assume our place as the next in line. That way, they won't have to explain why my generation has had to experience so much pain and heartache. What heartache, you say? Don't you know that you have grown up in a time of great prosperity? Yeah, we know that. Believe me, it has been drilled into our heads since birth. Unfortunately, the pain and hurt I speak of can't be reconciled with money. You have tried for years to buy us happiness, but it is only temporary. Money isn't the answer, and it is time for people to begin admitting their guilt for failing my generation.
I will admit that I wasn't planning to write this. I was going to tuck it away in some corner of my mind and fall victim to your whole next mentality. But after the massacre in Littleton, Colorado, I realized that as a member of this generation that kills without remorse, I had a duty to challenge all of my elders to explain why they have allowed things to become so bad.
Let me tell you this, these questions don't represent only me, but a whole generation that is struggling to grow up and make sense of this world. We all have questions, we all want explanations. People may label us Generation Next, but we are more appropriately Generation Y. Why did most of you lie when you made the vow of till death do us part? Why do you fool yourselves into believing that divorce really is better for the kids in the long run? Why do so many of you divorced parents spend more time with your new boyfriend or girlfriend than with your own children? Why did you ever fall victim to the notion that kids are just as well off being raised by a complete stranger at a daycare center than by their own mother or father? Why do you look down on parents who decide to quit work and stay home to raise their children? Why does the television do most of the talking at family meals? Why is work more important than your own family? Why is money regarded as more important than relationships? Why is quality time generally no longer than a 5 to 10 minute conversation each day?
Why do you try to make up for the lack of time you spend with us by giving us more and more material objects that we really don't need? Why does your work in the form of a cell phone, laptop, computer, etc. always come with us on vacations? Why have you neglected to teach us values and morals? Why haven't you lived moral lives that we could model our own after? Why isn't religion one of the most important words in our household? Why do you play God when it comes to abortion?
Why don't you have enough faith in us to teach us abstinence rather than safe sex? Why are you so afraid to tell us no sometimes?
Why do you allow us to watch violent movies but expect us to maintain some type of childlike innocence? Why do you allow us to spend unlimited amounts of time on the internet, but still are shocked about our knowledge of how to build bombs? Why is it so hard for you to realize that school shootings and other violent juvenile behavior result from the lack of your attention more than anything else?
Call us Generation Next if you want to, but I think you will be surprised at how we will fail to fit into your neat little category. These questions should and will be asked of the generations that have failed us.
Man, reality check to America. I mean, basically the whole world, if we could all just come back to our senses.
Did you know that $125 million was made after the first 5 days of The Passion of the Christ being released? After 7 days, it made $144.6 million. After The Passion went overseas, it became the #1 independent film in history. It's interesting to note that Mel Gibson was not given one single penny by Hollywood to help promote the movie. We went to see The Passion of the Christ in Kansas City when it first came out. And lo and behold, a sign at the entrance of the theater. This is what it said. The Passion of the Christ is rated R and contains graphic depictions of brutality. It is spoken in Aramaic and Latin with English subtitles. AMC, that's the movie theater owners, strongly advise parents to learn more about the film before deciding if it is appropriate for their children. I thought it was pretty interesting that they would put the sign up for The Passion of the Christ when all that Hollywood promotes is a whole lot of sex, drugs, violence, murder, and even cannibalism. That's when people eat people. Pretty sick, isn't it? Well, I checked out some of the other movies that were playing in the same movie theater at the same time. Keep in mind, they had The Passion of the Christ, which was rated R, for graphic depictions of brutality. This is what they were. The movie Monster was playing and was rated R for strong violence, sexual content, and pervasive language, yet there was no warning sign posted for that movie. The movie Calendar Girls was rated PG-13 due to nudity, language, and drug-related material, yet there was no warning sign for this movie either. The third movie I found was called 21 Grams. It was rated R for language, sexuality, violence, and even drug use. Yet again, there was no warning sign. So after seeing the hypocrisy of the entertainment industry, I came up with my own sign. Notice the moviegoer should state, AMC and filmmaking hypocrites advise parents to learn more about the film industry before deciding if it's appropriate for their children to even enter into a movie theater. Did you know that G-rated movies are far better at the box office than R-rated films are? Yet R-rated movies are pushed and released 12 times more than G-rated films. G-rated film profits made an average of $92.3 million, while R-rated film profits were only $17.9 million. You see, it's not about the money, folks. It's about what's being indoctrinated into the youth of our country. In 1946, the Production Movie Code of Motion Pictures of America stated that you could not say the following words during a movie: nuts to you, dang, lousy, or jerk. Also, if a crime was committed during a movie, the criminal had to be punished for his crime before that movie was over. Have you noticed all the movie theaters going up lately? A man named Caesar knew something that was really important and really powerful. He knew that he could control people by simply entertaining them. Pay close attention to what he said. Give men a piece of bread and a spectacle, entertain them, and I can do whatever I want to do with them. Again, why all the movie theaters going up? Why all the entertainment? Why all the cable TV with 80 different channels on it? Well, that's why. One last interesting point. The word tame, derived from entertain, means to stop from entering in. So as long as I'm entertaining you, I'm controlling you.
All you see is sex and money and drugs, and how can I learn responsibility and learn respect and learn to have a good attitude when I'm being taught those things?
The Motion Picture Production Code was the set of industry censorship guidelines which governed the production of U.S. movies released by major studios from 1930 to 1968. The Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors Association, also known as MPPDA, later became known as Motion Picture Association of America. They adapted the code in 1930 and began enforcing it in 1934. Then in 1968, they abandoned it in favor of the subsequent MPAA film rating system. The provisions of the code are as follows. Number 1, no picture shall be produced that will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience should never be thrown to the side of the crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin. Number 2, correct standards of life, subject only to the requirements of drama and entertainment, shall be presented. Number 3, law, natural or human, shall not be ridiculed, nor shall sympathy be created for its violation. The following list are specific restrictions laid out in the guidelines. Number 1, nakedness and suggestive dancing were prohibited. Number 2, the ridicule of religion was forbidden, and ministers of religion were not to be presented as comic characters or villains. Number 3, the depiction of illegal drug use was forbidden, as well as the use of liquor. Number 4, methods of crime, safecracking, arson, smuggling were not to be explicitly presented. Number 5, references to alleged sex perversion, such as homosexuality and venereal diseases, were forbidden, as were depictions of childbirth. Number 6, the sanctity of marriage and the home had to be upheld. Pictures could not imply the low forms of sex relationships were the accepted or common thing, and adultery and illicit sex, although recognized as sometimes necessary to the plot, could not be explicit or justified and were not supposed to be presented as an attractive option. And number 7, the flag of the United States was to be treated respectfully, and people in history of other nations were to be presented fairly. People are simply destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, rightly said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be." In other words, in youth talk, if a nation expects to be stuck on stupid and remains in freedom, you expect what never was and never will be. Now let me ask you a question, putting you to the test right away. Are we a republic or are we a democracy? People often reply and say that we are a democracy. Well, if we were a democracy, then this is how we would say the Pledge of Allegiance in our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the minority and to the democracy for which it falls, one nation under a dictatorship with bondage and injustice for all. But what is the American Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, James Madison, known as the father of our Constitution, rightly said this about what a democracy really is. Democracy is the most vile form of government. But let me ask you something, America. What are you being taught through the media on a constant basis? That we are a democracy. No, we are not. James Madison continues, democracies have ever been a spectacle of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security, of personal rights, of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have in their violent deaths. Now, people will say, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? Let's say there's a ship floating on the top of the water. A storm comes and all the winds are blowing that ship. If there is no anchor holding that ship down, that ship is going to blow around with every wind of doctrine. That's a democracy. But if that ship has an anchor, which we have as a republic, guess what? That ship isn't going to go anywhere, no matter how hard the wind blows. The 7th President of the United States, Andrew Jackson, rightly understood this when he said, "The Bible is the rock upon which our republic rests." That means in America, the men we vote in are subject unto God in His laws. This is called common law, the 10 Commandments, which you see on top of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. So, what is the difference between a republic and a democracy? Who does the government and its people submit themselves to? Now, the topic of the media. We firstly need to remember what John Adams, the 2nd President of the United States, said. Our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Now let me ask you, how many of you believe what the media reports? Now remember what John Adams said, our Constitution was made for a moral people. In Webster's 1828 dictionary, the word moral is defined as the conformity to the standard of right. I wanted to see why there was so much downfall, fear, oppression, and immorality being pushed through the media on the American people. So I went and did my homework. Now, are you ready for the big news? This is what we found. In 1917, Congressman Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the congressional record, and this is what it was. J.P. Morgan, a banker and a steel tycoon, hired 12 high-ranking news managers and editors and asked them to determine the most influential newspapers in America. He wanted to control the policy of the daily press of the United States, and that policy being whatever he wanted it to be. The 12 found that it was only necessary to purchase 25 of the greatest newspapers. An agreement was reached, the policy of the papers was bought, and an editor of their choice was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping of the new policy. And again, keep in mind, it was their policy. In a nutshell, what are they doing? The news media is being controlled by very few throughout major networks in the United States and even worldwide. There are those that are trying to rearrange reality to become the reality that they want you to believe in. Robert Lichter and Stanley Rothman, 2 media scholars, interviewed 240 news anchors, editors, and news writers, and here's what they found out. 47% of those that report the news in this country believe that adultery is okay. That's cheating on your spouse. Dad and mom cheating on each other. I'm from a broken family, and I'm sure that a lot of you listening to this are from broken families as well. In 28 states to this day, it is illegal for folks to commit adultery on each other, but the laws have not been enforced in this country since 1944. 76% of those that report the news see nothing wrong with homosexuality. All the way up until 2002, the laws on acts of sodomy were intact. They have now been overturned in this country. Before 1961, this was illegal in every single state in this country. They were rightly called crimes against nature. Until 1973, it was also considered to be a mental illness in the United States. Now what is the media pushing on you? That it's normal, when in truth it is not. If you were breaking the law in Rhode Island before 1961, you would go to prison for up to 20 years because the laws were very harsh, as were they enforced. 90% of those that write your papers in this country believe that there is nothing wrong with aborting a baby. For those that didn't know, up until 1973, it was against the law to have an abortion. How contrary to the Constitution of the United States. Now you're being taught that it is no big deal. 86% of those that write your paper in this country seldom or never attend church. A few years ago, we had the opportunity to interview Don Shelby, a news anchor with WCCO Channel 4 in Minneapolis. And we asked him how he could tell right from wrong. This was his reply.
If you're asking the media to be some arbiter of morality, you're asking the wrong person. If you're asking journalists to be an arbiter of morality, you're asking the wrong people. Because journalists should not be an arbiter of morality. You should be the arbiter of morality. My job is to determine what's fair and just. Or not what is fair and just, I shouldn't say that. But where fairness and justice is failing.
Well, Don, how can you tell what's fair or unfair, just or unjust, if you have no knowledge between what's right and what's wrong? Let me show you what the media's meaning of fairness and justice really is. Here's Richard Salent, former president of CBS News. He said, "Our job is to give people not what they want, but what we decide they ought to have." Now that's pretty arrogant, isn't it? Walter Cronkite, former CBS News anchor, said, "News reporters are certainly liberal and left of center." Herman Dismore, foreign editor of the New York Times, said, "The New York Times is deliberately, that's on purpose, pitched to the liberal point of view." Here's Richard Cohen, senior producer for CBS. He said, "We are going to impose our agenda on the coverage by dealing with issues and subjects that we choose to deal with." Well, the good news is we still have Fox, right? Wrong. You know the slogan, "We report, you decide"? It should rightly be said, "We decide on what we report." Now, the problem with Fox News is that 40 to 60% of all the comments made are inaccurate or completely false. Furthermore, did you know that part owner of Fox News is none other than Prince Al-Walid bin Talal? He said that a strong American government is not good for us. So much for Fox News. And jumping over to CNN, Amber Lyon, who's an award-winning journalist who used to work for CNN, stated that she was ordered to report fake stories, delete unfriendly stories adverse to the Obama administration, and construct stories in specific manners while working for the left-wing network.
What's being told here is the way that these networks want to spin the truth, and that's leading us into another potential conflict with Iran.
She goes on. CNN is paid by foreign and the U.S. government for reporting on some events and not reporting on others. She said the Obama administration pays for CNN's content.
And after I came forward the first time about the Bahrain situation, my agent was called by someone representing the executives at CNN, and my agent was told that if I continued to talk, my severance and health insurance would be pulled. Well, now that Obama is subpoenaing journalists to reveal those sources and essentially saying that they're criminals for not doing so, he has criminalized the profession of journalism. I saw the direct effect of Obama's actions at CNN. There were investigations that I wasn't allowed to do because they were too high of a risk of being subpoenaed.
What about none other than good old Piers Morgan? You know, the guy that used to work for BBC News, Did you know that BBC News reported that Piers Morgan was fired from his editorial job at the Daily Mirror for publishing fraudulent photographs in May of 2004? Furthermore, he's also been implicated in a media phone hacking scandal in Britain. And even after knowing all of this, CNN hires him. Now let's go over to Dr. Udo Ulftat, a German editor and journalist. He said the entire mainstream media is totally fake.
I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public.
He goes on, the CIA gets control over all of the majority of journalists.
There's many countries where this happens, where you find people to claim they are respected journalists, but if you look behind them, you'll find they are puppets on a string of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Now, was that true? Well, let's just go over to William Casey, the former CIA director. What does he have to say about all this? He said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Now, do you remember Madonna and Britney Spears kissing, which appeared across the front page of newspapers, not only across the entire country, but also across the world? Why would the media be sure to push this and neglect to show us the sacrifice of our brothers, sisters, dads, moms, uncles, and aunts that have fought and died and bled in foreign wars? You see, they're bleeding the battlefields red with their blood for our liberties, folks, and yet the media pushes a bunch of immorality down your throat. They were pushing two women kissing each other in order that the youth across America would think it was normal behavior.
We're bored with the concept of right and wrong.
It appeared in the Irish Examiner, the Jamaica Observer, Japan Today, USA Today, the Scotsman, UK, Rocky Mountain News, Slate, Sioux City Journal, and more. But in the back of the papers, what was not shown? The sacrifice of those that are dying to uphold what the media is trying to tear down. The media immediately jumped on pushing an illegal agenda in your country. How did they do it? Well, let me give you one example. On May 1st, 2002, in Washington, D.C., 20,000 people protested gay marriage, which is illegal in this country. And might I add, never in the history of mankind has there ever been any such thing as gay marriage. There were also 300 homosexuals there holding up signs stating, "Go home, bigots." The media, ABC, CBS, and the Associated Press twisted the truth and told the public that the 300 homosexuals holding up signs stating, "Go home, bigots," were the majority and made the 20,000 protesters out to be the minority, totally turning the event to be against the bigots instead of against gay marriage. In the true story, Separate but Equal, blacks were not to integrate with whites in public schools. This issue was color, not morality.
Thaddeus Stevens. Read it. Thaddeus Stevens.
Thaddeus Stevens, in debate on the floor of Congress when the 14th Amendment was first presented, stated, "Where any state makes distinctions between different classes of individuals, Congress shall have power to correct such discrimination inequality according to law. No distinction will be tolerated in this purified republic but what rose from merit and conduct."
Place this in the front section of the brief.
In essence, he was saying morality is what constitutes or merits a citizen in this country, not color. Being born black is not a crime. Choosing to perform immoral acts is. Breaking the law is moral, not physical. In other words, all men and women have the power to choose to do that which is right or to choose that which is wrong. Who better to put this point into proper perspective than Martin Luther King?
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Let's go to the topic of abortion. Did you know that Mother Teresa rightly said, any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people to love, but to use any violence to get what it wants? How far we have fallen, America. Did you know that it's illegal to tamper with an eagle egg? It's called the Bald Eagle Protection Act. If you violate any part of this act by tampering with an eagle, their nest, or their eggs, you will face the criminal penalty of a $5,000 fine, 1 year imprisonment, or both. But 3,700 babies a day are being aborted in this country. Did you also know that it's illegal to kill whales in this country? Yet 3,700 babies are aborted in this country every day. Did you know that it's illegal to pick flowers in state parks? Yet again, 3,700 babies a day are being aborted in this country. Let me ask you the question, how many of you like chicken? When touring the schools of this country, we saw a billboard in Arkansas of Richard Pryor stating, "Join us in boycotting Kentucky Fried Chicken for its cruelty to chickens." Folks, this is a sick mentality. We're protesting Kentucky Fried Chicken for its cruelty to chickens, while we in America let thousands of babies be aborted in this country every day? For those that don't know the name Norma McCorvey, it's Roe versus Wade, the 1973 case that opened the doors wide for our babies to be slaughtered by abortion. Today she is trying to get abortion overthrown because she said that she feels responsible for the death of millions of children who have been aborted in this country since 1973. She stated in an interview that a few lawyers got involved in her case and took it way too far. Again, this isn't what the majority of the people want as a republic. Yet, why does it happen every day in this country? Because the American people let it. That's why. Norma McCorvey rightly said, "I want the Supreme Court to know that abortion hurts women as well as killing their children." Samuel Armis was diagnosed with spina bifida at 14 weeks gestation. When he had spent only 21 weeks in his mother's womb, a team of doctors operated on him in an attempt to prevent the most serious effects of spina bifida. The procedure took place within the uterus, and no part of the child was to breach the surgical opening. When the surgical procedure was over and the doctor began to close the incision, Samuel's thumbnail-sized hand flopped out. The doctor gently lifted it up and tucked it back inside. If his parents listened to what the media has been pushing down the throats of the American people, they would have chosen to destroy Samuel's life rather than to save it. Because after all, they would have said it's not a human being. But Samuel's parents chose life instead of death for Samuel, and today he is walking with leg braces, is cognitively normal, and loves looking for bugs. Here's some food for thought. Out of 331 high schools we have reached across this nation, there have only been 2 girls who have had a problem with the topic of abortion. When one of them asked the question, "Bradlee, what do you think of abortion?" I replied with, "Well, thank God Mama didn't abort you," and that's the end of the conversation. Again, Mother Teresa was right when she said, "It's a poverty to decide that a child must die so that you may live as you wish." Now, I want to make a really strong point. A 17-year-old girl from Oakdale, Minnesota delivered a baby in April of 2007 in her laundry room. Once the baby was born, she then proceeded to stab the baby over 135 times and threw it in the garbage. 2 years later, she was sentenced to life in prison. The news reported that all she had to do was bring it to the hospital and have it adopted out. Yet she could have gone to any abortion clinic to have the doctor commit the same crime, yet he'd have been paid to do it. How hypocritical. Did you know that 1% of all abortions occur because of rape or incest? That 6% of abortions occur because of potential health problems, that being of the mother or the child? 93% of all abortions occur for social reasons. Listen to the mother and the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. She said the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. Just one more point about Planned Parenthood. While Obama has been advocating the legalization of abortion on demand, we thought that he might want to know who the abortion agenda is aimed at. Margaret Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood, and she had some interesting things to say. On blacks, immigrants, and indigents, she refers to them as human weeds, reckless breeders, spawning, human beings who never should have been born. On sterilization and racial purification, Margaret believed that for the purpose of racial purification, couples should be rewarded who choose sterilization. On the rights of the handicapped, mentally ill, and racial minorities, Margaret said, more children from the fit, less from the unfit, that is the chief aim of birth control. On the extermination of blacks, Margaret said, we do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, she said. Sanger knew blacks were a religious people and how useful ministers would be better to her project. She wrote, the minister's work is also important and he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. America, now you know. In an astonishing admission, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg says she was under the impression that legalizing abortion with the 1973 Roe v. Wade case would eliminate undesirable members of the populace, or as she put it, populations that we don't want to have too many of. America, in their confusion, they blurt out the truth. Undesirables, huh?
When we saw the pictures of the abortion, it just really hit. And it's just how could people do that to their kids and don't punish them for the mistake that you made.
Dr. Alveda King on a television talk show talked about her uncle Martin Luther King Jr. and the power of nonviolence. She shared that every participant in the civil rights marches in the 1960s was required to sign this pledge before they could participate. Number 1, meditate on the teachings of Jesus daily. Number 2, remember that the nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not just victory. Number 3, walk and talk in the manner of love, charity, for God is love. And number 4, pray daily to be used by God. Where does it stop, America? Kevin Jennings is the founder of the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, GLSEN, which pushes so-called anti-bullying policies, which even GLSEN admits are really about promoting affirmation of homosexual behavior in the school system. Jennings is intolerant of the religious right, 90% of whom enroll their children in public schools, and said out of his own mouth, I'm trying not to say them. I don't care what they think. Drop dead. he wants homosexual indoctrination of students at all levels. Having written the foreword to a book entitled Queering Elementary Education. And by his own admission, Kevin failed his legal duty to report what he believed to be a case of statutory rape when a young student approached him for counsel after the boy had been preyed on by an older adult in a local bus station bathroom.
So while you're doing calls to the school register, you got very quiet. And you finally looked at me and said, well, I met somebody in the bus station bathroom that I went home with them. High school sophomore, 15 years old.
Jennings' main piece of advice to the boy was,
and I said, no, I hope you never use it on me.
The National Education Association, the NEA, continues to alienate more and more of its conservative constituents as the organization showed its liberal leanings at its 2010 National Convention. At this year's meetings in New Orleans, the largest professional organization and labor union in the United States recognized a new caucus, the NEA Drag Queen Caucus. They already had the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender caucus, and apparently felt that the drag queens needed their own caucus. Again, where does it stop, America? Homosexual icon Frank Kameny said in his letter to Americans for Truth, bestiality is not my thing, but it seems to be a harmless, foilable, or idiosyncrasy of some people. So as long as the animal doesn't mind, and the animal rarely does, said Frank, I don't mind, and I don't see why anyone else should. Oh, and by the way, this is also the guy that said that the God of the Bible is a sinful, homophobic bigot who needs to repent. Well, at least now it's clear who they're at war with. But Frank is not alone in his thought process of bestiality. Elton John, yes, I said Elton John, the talented musician, also stated, there's nothing wrong with going to bed with someone of your own sex. People should be very free with sex. They should draw the line at goats. Now, the word perversion in Webster's 1828 defines out as being the act of perverting, a turning from truth, a diverting from the true intent, a perversion of Scripture when it is willfully misinterpreted or misapplied. We all know that the rainbow is the symbol for the homosexual communities. But did you know that the rainbow in the Bible was given to Noah after God destroyed the earth through judgment with the flood? Well, why did God destroy the earth, some might ask? It says in Genesis 6:5, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The rainbow was given by God as the token of the covenant. God said, I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. Or would you like to know why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? Let's go to Genesis 13:13. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. What is sin? It is the transgression of God's laws. Let me give you the reply from heaven towards wickedness in this earth for those that want to tempt the Lord God of Israel. and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample unto those that afterward should live ungodly. Those who attempt to play the devil's advocate with God's true intention better understand that next time he is judging the world by fire, not by water. Not too long ago, I received a phone call from an individual telling me, Bradlee, you need to show compassion to the homosexual communities. I said to her, I am showing them compassion by telling them the truth, but I want to show you their compassion towards me after I did tell them the truth. What's up with you and your bigotry? It's not bigotry, it's decency. You're anti-gay. No, I'm pro-family. Quit spewing out your hate. America, since when did hate tell the truth? It's called love. Quit gay bashing. I'm not gay bashing. I'm enforcing the laws of our lands towards crimes against nature. Quit discriminating, Bradlee, against us. I'm not discriminating. I'm magnifying the laws of our land again. Is it discrimination when the law comes down on them that steal, them that commit adultery or lie? No, it is not. It's called the magnification of the laws of the land. Some more emails that I received through these compassionate homosexuals was, you're a sick you're go yourself, Bradlee Dean, or burn in hell and the such. And my favorite email that I received from the homosexuals was, beware of false prophets. Oh, you strain at the gnat while you swallow the camel. Well, since you brought up the word of God, it says in Ezekiel 3:17, and by the way, Ezekiel was a prophet, it states, Son of man, I made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. So to those that have a lack of understanding in this area, please do understand that I'm simply conveying to you through the word of God, your sin is before God, not man. So the compassion falls in line with truth. It's not outside of it. You ever wonder what happens when you take a stance against homosexuality? Well, if you're not shouted down, then they begin to intimidate you. And if intimidation doesn't work, then they try to create crimes against you that you knew nothing of. And, well, then if that doesn't work, then they just try to have you removed. Several times on my radio show, I have taken the time to love the homosexual communities by warning them of their sins, their lawless deeds before God and man. America, I said love, because love warns, it does not cover up crimes against nature. It exposes them so they can repent before God. While broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., I had warned again the homosexual communities that the Muslims were calling for their executions. Instead of saying, thank you, Bradlee, I got Bradlee Dean calling for the execution of the homosexuals. See, the radical homosexual leaders are trying to make me out to be the opposite of what I have always been to their communities, and that is their friend in truth. The part that they don't want is the truth. This was not far enough for them. On my radio show, I at one point was saying good luck to Tom Emmer, the gubernatorial candidate for the state of Minnesota, who is pro-family, pro-life, and pro-marriage. So the homosexuals decided to pull me out into their politics by going after Tom, who they did not want to become their governor. Little did I know what was coming next. The homosexuals had found that the outlet store Target gave some money to Tom's campaign. So the radical homosexuals went after Target as well. Oh, it gets better than that. Because, you see, these criminals wanted to have it their way at all costs. They took me as the kill the homosexual guy, you know, the gay bigot, equate me to Tom Emmer, and me and him now having gone door to door campaigning for his gubernatorial position, and protesting Target for supporting Tom Emmer. So Target, Tom Emmer, and Bradlee Dean now are all linked to kill the homosexuals somehow? Pretty sick, yeah. All based on, once again, the homosexuals fabricating stories so as to play the victims of these bad and hateful people. It didn't stop there, America. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow's show picked up the story as well. Played out what I had just told you without any phone calls to me or my ministry. All again to their shame. And little did they know, I was also on Fox and Friends the same day, speaking out against those that were actually calling for their execution. And it's time for the American people to stand up and say to the foreigners that are coming to our country, it's time for you to see it our way. And when we say no, folks, you need to understand lawless people do not play according to the law or the rules. Later on, I received a phone call from CNN, and to my surprise, they actually reported the truth and debunked the homosexual radicals once again. After CNN reported on the story, no longer was Tom Emmer or Target equated to the kill the homos guy. That would be me. This reporter from CNN asked me, Bradlee, did you really say that? I said, thanks for asking. Now, one more note. I had put in a request to Rachel Maddow's show to have me on her show live so I can answer for myself, yet without response. Folks, they're not interested in the truth. Or how about Miss USA pageant contestant Carrie Prejean when she came under fire for her answer to a question about gay marriage in the Trump-owned Miss USA pageant, in which she was the runner-up. After the pageant, Prejean was continuously attacked as she defended her belief that gays and lesbians should not be given the right to marry in California. Prejean stated, they don't agree with the stance that I took on Proposition 8. She told the entertainment news site, they don't like me. From day one, they wanted me out. Did you know that never in the history of mankind has there ever been any such thing as gay marriage? Here, let me bring it back to scripture again, just so we can make the distinction between a false prophet and a true prophet. Jesus said in Matthew 19:5, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, we all have fathers and mothers, and shall cleave to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. In 2008, worshipers at a Mount Hope Church in Lansing, Michigan, were stunned when members of a pro-homosexual, pro-anarchy organization interrupted their service to fling propaganda and condoms around the sanctuary. Yes, I said in a church. Drape a profane banner from the balcony and feature two lesbians making out at the pulpit. The open-minded and tolerant liberals ran down the aisles and across the pews, hoping against hope to catch a right-winger on tape daring to push back. None did. Let me take you a step further. Before his passing on September 5th, 2007, Dr. D. James Kennedy of Coral Ridge Ministries shared with me that on one occasion before speaking on the topic of homosexuality publicly, that an individual had showed up to his room with a vial of the AIDS virus and asked him if he would like it injected into his body. Well, no, I wouldn't, replied Dr. Kennedy. Then the individual demanded that he not go to the meeting to speak out against homosexuality. What do you expect from those that are at war with God and will not be ruled by law? Again, what happens when these homosexuals will not be ruled by law and the American people do not enforce them laws against these crimes? They begin to create their own policies to try and normalize their crimes. And in the meantime, create laws to shut down all opposition toward their lifestyles called hate crimes. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Matthew Shepard, the victim of a supposed hate crime. The media pushed that he was killed because he was gay, when in fact it had nothing to do with his sexual orientation. Laramie Police Detective Ben Fritzen, one of the lead investigators in the case, said Matthew Shepard's sexual preference or sexual orientation certainly wasn't the motive in this homicide. If it wasn't Shepard, they would have found another easy target. What it came down to really is drugs and money and two punks that were out looking for it, Fritzen said. But just ignore the facts for a minute because it doesn't stop there. Barney Frank, the Massachusetts representative who co-authored the Matthew Shepard bill, the provision called Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which, by the way, is a clear violation of your First Amendment, was enacted and attached to a Defense Authorization Bill S1390 for military functions. It was attached to a defense bill knowing all the well that none in our government would dare vote against our military and its defense. Talking about deceptive. On July 15th, 2009, when the American people became aware as to what these people were trying to implement, the Capitol Hill switchboard was shut down because so many people were trying to call their representatives and senators about all of these dangerous bills that are being ramrodded through the House and Senate. The American people have acknowledged that this is the most irresponsible Congress in our nation's history. Now back to Barney Frank, the author of the hate crimes bill. Barney Frank is an acknowledged homosexual who has confirmed that his Washington apartment has been used as a call boy headquarters by a male prostitute for a year and a half until late 1987. America, the writing is on the wall. Do not these bills reflect the crimes of their authors? Now, I originally asked, where does it stop, America? Well, I have the answer. It stops with you because these people are not operating under the law. And P.S., since when was it government's job to demoralize America? It's my clear understanding that the whole purpose of government is to restrain men from sin, not to promote it. Folks, right must always be right, truth must always be truth, and purity must always be purity. Right and wrong is a permanent fixture of morality that God established through the Ten Commandments that cannot be moved or shifted from their proper place. You cannot bring right down to a lower level because others may want it lowered to fit their lawless lifestyles. It must be where it always is. What? Is crime to replace the law that produces liberty? That's no good for any society. That produces bondage, not liberty. Do away with the law and you have no crime, and criminals love that mentality. Right is right eternally. It cannot be wrong. You cannot lift up wrong and make it somewhat right. It doesn't work that way. We have all heard the lawless try to excuse themselves of doing that which is right, just, and true by saying, I was born this way, or I just can't help myself. This is very specious, but utterly false. Man's inability is not the kind which removes responsibility. It is moral, not physical. So never fall into the error that moral inability will be an excuse for sin, lawlessness. What? When a man becomes such a liar that he cannot speak the truth, is he thereby exempted from the duty of truthfulness? Because of course he can't help himself. If your employee owes you a day of labor, is he free from the duty because he's made himself so drunk that he cannot serve you? Is a man freed from debt by the fact that he has spent the money and therefore cannot pay it? Or is a lustful man free to indulge his passions because he cannot understand the beauty of chastity or morality? Because after all, I was born this way. This is a dangerous doctrine, America. The law is a just one, and man is bound by it, though his sin has rendered him incapable of doing so. So what are we missing? The 10 Commandments. Exodus 20. Number 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, that is, a god to suit your sins, nor bow down thyself to serve them. Number 3, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Number 5, honor thy father and thy mother. Number 6, thou shalt not kill. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. Number 8, thou shalt not steal. Number 9, thou shalt not lie. Number 10, thou shalt not covet. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that you sin not. Let me teach you real biblical grace for a moment, if I might. If you read the teachings of Jesus Christ, and more specifically Matthew 5:29, Christ taught that sin, the transgression of God's law, is so abominable that it were better for you to pluck out your eye or to cut off your hand than to break God's laws. In essence, Jesus was teaching us through grace that it were better for us to lose a member of our body than to commit sin before God. Jesus is teaching us the fear of God coupled with the value of our souls, not to pluck out our eye or to cut off our hand. Here again, Christ is showing us that grace magnifies, that true grace disciplines unto holiness. Charles Finney was right when he said, God is not angry merely against the sin abstracted from the sinner, but against the sinner himself. Some persons have labored hard to set up this ridiculous and absurd abstraction and would fain make it appear that God is angry at the sin, yet not at the sinner. He hates the theft, but loves the thief. He abhors adultery, but is pleased with the adulterer. Now this is supreme nonsense. The sin has no moral character apart from the sinner. The act is nothing apart from the actor. The very thing that God hates and disapproves is not the mere event, the thing done in distinction from the doer, but it is the doer himself. It grieves and displeases him that a rational moral agent under his government should array himself against his own God and Father, against all that is right and just in the universe. This is the thing that offends God. The sinner himself is the direct and the only object of his anger.
So the Bible shows God is angry with the wicked, not with the abstract sin. If the wicked turn not, God will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. Not to shoot the sin, however, but the sinner, the wicked man who has done the abominable thing. This is the only doctrine of either the Bible or of common sense on this subject.
Let me check out your intuitiveness, your insight into those that you allowed to lead your world. How many presidential candidates were there in the 2008 presidential race? Most people respond with 2 or 3. Well, the facts are that there were 19. There were others that weren't even worth mentioning, so I didn't. 19 legitimate candidates to pick from. Why is it that most only heard of only 2 or 3 candidates when there were 19 to pick from? What's the message, America? Does the media decide for you? There is 303,824,640 people in this country, and you knew of 3 candidates? Pretty crazy, huh? I want you to pick the next world leader, think of your options, weigh things out, know the facts, and then make your choice. Let's see what the consequence of your future picks will bring. It's time to elect a new world leader, and of course, your vote counts. Now, here are the facts and characteristics of the 3 leading candidates. Candidate A. He associates with crooked politicians and consults with astrologists. He's had 2 mistresses, chain smokes, and drinks 8 to 10 margaritas a day. Here's candidate B. He was kicked out of office twice, sleeps until noon, used opium in college, and drinks a quart of whiskey every evening. Now here's candidate C. He's a decorated war hero. He's a vegetarian. He doesn't smoke, he drinks an occasional beer, and has never had any extramarital affairs. In other words, he's never cheated on his wife. Now, after pondering these 3 candidates, which one did you choose? Candidate A? Candidate A happens to be Franklin D. Roosevelt. Or candidate B? Candidate B is none other than Winston Churchill. And of course, if you chose candidate C, as I did, you picked none other than Adolf Hitler himself. Pay close attention to what he said. How fortunate for government that the people they administer to don't think. Be not deceived or led astray. It is Satan who disguises himself as an angel of light. Be not deceived. A man once said, one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. Did you know that the Roman Emperor Constantine professed to be a Christian, just like Hitler and many others did, changing with the times because they saw that it would strengthen their empires? Constantine said, I am a Christian, and by this sign, speaking of the cross, I conquer. The true intent of his pretended conversion was to control the Christians and to conquer them by the use of the cross. He looked like a Christian, talked like a Christian, acted like a Christian, at least publicly, all in the hopes that the people would not judge him by the fruit that he bore. The sad fact is that it worked for him because the people accepted what he said instead of judging him by what he did. Men substituted Christ as their king, the Lord of glory, for an earthly king. Can you imagine, America, what our country would be like if we all knew the Word of God, practiced what we preached, knew our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and our Bill of Rights? These bad guys wouldn't have a chance in the world now, would they? No way.
I'm Amberly Kendall. I'm a prevention coordinator for Scott County, and I just wanted to say that I thought your program was absolutely amazing. The format was incredible. You got the kids' attention before you ever tried to talk to them. The references used were wonderful. If nothing else, even if there may be some negative feedback, it will get the kids to go and do their own research, raise their own questions, find out their own answers, and think among themselves. So I appreciate what you're doing, raising awareness to these kids about all the issues they face today. It's wonderful.
the faith of our fathers. The assembly performed in Northfield, Minnesota. It was just another high school assembly as in any other school throughout the country. Outside of me catching a kid in the bathroom smoking marijuana,
How many partied? I must be in the right school then.
it was just another success story of our educational program to the youth of this country. Let me get some of the common attack factors out of the way from the media. Are you ready? Set? Let's go. Accusation. This reporter writes, the evangelist is Bradlee Dean. Picked up an electric guitar and has been reaping the benefits from his born-again nonprofit status ever since? Fact. Folks, just for the record, I'm not a guitar player. Secondly, what does evangelist have to do with this setting? This reporter was trying to equate me with biblical vernacular in hopes of reinforcing an anti-Christian sentiment to offend the people that read this gossip column. Fact. I am a Christian. I don't leave my heart and my principles and values at the door for no one. I'm also the main speaker in the assembly program. Again, this reporter is trying to set the reader against Christians by saying, look at where your tax dollars are going. As if by having us in their school was any different than having any other program in their school. That is, as far as the tax status goes, kind of a backwards way to come at us, America, especially when we live in a Christian nation. Fact. Funding for any school assembly is a non-taxable event, for we are in the business of education. Is it not discrimination when one reports in such a fashion as to say, from his born-again experience? Fact. Now this reporter is making it personal and unlawful. What did this reporter expect from me or any other American to do for our youth? What, stand down in what we believe because this reporter does not? Was I to adhere to an uneducated mentality because she has? I was in this school to raise the bar in education by showing them our foundations because, as we all know, the students in our country will always arise to the level of expectation. This reporter, if she were to examine herself in the light of the Constitution, remember she named the article Faith of Our Fathers? She could clearly see that her folly undoes everything in which we truly stand for as a country. Surely she must understand that we as a people are standing on the foundations in this country that our forefathers laid as a republic, clearly seeing the price paid for our freedoms. How foolish could one be as to overlook the sacrifice that was paid to ratify our Constitution? For our fathers, as she said, paid with their lives. What, can I not stand for that which they died? Absolutely I can, I will, and, by the way, I am. Accusation. This reporter states a high school in Minnesota gave him $5,000 of your tax dollars. Fact. We in most cases have to raise the finances of $1,500 to do assemblies because of all of the government budget cuts. Fact. We have went so far as to Key West High School in Key West, Florida, from Minneapolis, Minnesota for $500. And then once we arrived, we raised the rest of our own money to pay for the program. And by the way, we have done this several times. Fact. Up to this point, we had never asked for more than $1,500 for a single school assembly. Never. Accusation. According to a petition, said this reporter, the program made fun of developmentally disabled. Fact. The assembly was stopped to give this developmentally disabled student a drumstick.
Here you go, bro. Hey, man, thank you. You're welcome. It's all yours.
This one did hurt. And why did it hurt? because I did not want to take away that special moment from this student. It also hurt my heart to think that people in this town could be so foolish as to believe this gossip without first knowing the facts. What's even more appalling is the fact that no one called and asked me any questions after all these accusations erupted about the assembly. Not one. In other portions of the media tidbits on our assembly, this reporter respectably put us on the last portion in the back on the final comments from the students. That is, of course, after putting us on the front page of their paper twice and several full-page reviews throughout the following couple of weeks. Again, up to this point, never once was I contacted. And furthermore, even after I invited my accusers to confront me at a local church that Sunday, only one person showed up. The students were quoted as saying under the headline, "Not everyone bothered. People are freaking out and saying it is a matter of lines between church and state." One boy said, "I asked a few people if this was a Buddhist group, would you have been upset?" And they said no. I think the main thing is this is anti-Christian, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in our nation, said one student. Let me get this right. Anti-Christian theme in a Christian town and in a Christian nation. The principal ended in this article by saying the number of students who were offended or strongly supportive of what had taken place, the overall number in those two camps, relatively speaking, is small in relationship to the student body. Folks, also pay attention to the fact that this is the one or two that did not agree with us that gets the media's attention, because after all, this is what the media is looking for. And there the media is, in this case, standing there to report not the facts again, but their liberal opinion. Remember what Richard Cohen, the senior producer of CBS Political News, said? We are going to impose our agenda on the coverage by dealing with the issues and subjects that we choose to deal with. When this reporter called me on the telephone, she said, "Bradlee, I do not believe as you do." No, really? Maybe that's why I do what I do, because I do believe. I thought to myself, is it not you and your generation the ones that are responsible to teach me and my generation what I'm teaching your children? Yes, it is. I also thought it was important, America, to let you know that this columnist is a Presbyterian pastor who also works for the Minnesota Civil Liberties Union. Where she stands in life, I don't know. Can you say confusion, hypocritical? She's from a little college town, and might I add, a Bible college town. I've often wondered where she derives right from wrong, and assuredly not from the Bible that she preaches from every week. But then again, it was the Pharisees, the religious hypocrites of the day, that even crucified Jesus Christ. And I can clearly see not much has changed in 2,000 years. The writing is on the wall, folks. One question I have to ask of this column reporter: how was one of the two assembly programs that day at Northfield High? Fact, the reporter who reported on our assembly was not at either assembly that day, reporting again on an event that she herself was not at. Why was she so angry with me? Because her daughter, that was an atheist, was offended that I was in her school doing the assembly.
Later, when finally called upon by this reporter, and of course after the slander was slung, she told me that her daughter that was in the assembly that day was an atheist and didn't think that our foundational and constitutional curriculum was appropriate for her public school. Well, maybe she should explain to her daughter what our veterans fought, bled, and died for. When fighting for our country, our fathers, again, as her article was called, have taught us by their own examples that there is no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. What, I ask, should I be teaching to our daughter in a public school? In America, we love our freedoms, and I'm to withhold that from our youth? The knowledge of the price paid? Am I not to magnify the Constitution for what our veterans so greatly sacrificed? Am I not to teach responsibility and teach our youth to walk in the paths that have been beaten and trodden before them? We will and we shall obligate ourselves by duty, not only to the education of our kids, but also to maintain and to sustain our blood-bought freedoms. America, we have not only an obligation and a duty only to educate, but also to demonstrate, and this, by the way, is the faith and fruit of our fathers. And this is why we are a free nation. And what I ask is the inscription in the front of our Supreme Court building: eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Let me say this. Just because you live in America doesn't make you an American. What makes you an American is when you live for what those men and women died for. When all of this was being covered through their local media, and I mean at its hottest point, I asked a local pastor to put an invitation in their local paper for all of mine accusers and opposers to come confront me at the local church. Only one person, yes, America, I said, one person showed up. Out of a town population of 19,859 people, on the front page and several full-page articles in their paper making accusations, only one person cared to know what truly happened during our assembly? You gotta be kidding me. It reminds me a bit of our visit to a national theme park a couple years ago. Everyone having fun and being entertained, laughing it up, eating, dancing, and playing. Yet over there in the distance, sitting all alone and unaccompanied, was our Liberty Bell, with our American flags all around it. The inscription written on the Liberty Bell, taken from the Bible, was none other than Leviticus 25:10, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. How is one to accept the liberty that is being proclaimed throughout the land if no one cares enough to understand what upholds and maintains our liberty that we are to proclaim? Hopefully you can now understand why this documentary is called My War. I now know more than ever that freedom is not given to do what you want to do. It is given to do what you ought to do. Folks, I have to say that it's hard not getting this kind of media attention when you have the best high school assembly program in the country, because it stands against everything that those behind the indoctrinated media players have been trying to erase from the eyes of our kids. And by the way, this is the faith of our fathers. After leaving Northfield, Minnesota, I started to notice the media attention that they were getting on a city, state, and nationwide level. On the front cover of the Minneapolis Star and Tribune, it said, "Northfield residents want woes to be gone." In July of 2007, they found out that Northfield was a heroin haven. The paper reported that the city's prim college town image has taken a beating with allegations of rampant heroin use and turmoil in leadership, drug use, city employee, and even city mayor allegations. Then on March 11th, 2009, Northfield heroin dealer pleads guilty. In northern Rice County alone, a half a dozen residents died from heroin overdoses in the 30 months prior to the arrests. Does this justify my point? Yes, it does. Am I happy about this? No way. As a matter of fact, I wonder if those that died from overdosing were there that day in our assembly who were afterward taught by these reporters to hate what the faith of our fathers has taught us. And that is always, prevention is better than cure. It is our youth that are being destroyed for what we allow to fall unto them and who you allow to educate them. I do, however, have one thing I'd like to say to Northfield, Minnesota. If you want your woes to be gone, then next time, do not reject the light that exposes your woes. To the reporter that named the article, Faith of Our Fathers, here you have it. None other than one of our signers,
Dr. Benjamin Rush, who, by the way, helped found 5 colleges, was a university professor, authored numerous textbooks, and was one of the proposers of public schools in America and the father of public schools under the Constitution. Dr. Benjamin Rush stated, "The Bible should always remain the principal textbook in American education." He also warned what would happen if the Bible were ever removed from public schools. In contemplating the political institutions of the United States, I lament that if we remove the Bible from schools, I'm talking to you, Northfield, we waste so much time and money in punishing crimes and take so little pains to prevent them. For this divine book, above all others, favors that equality among mankind, that respect for just laws, and those sober and fragile virtues which constitute the soul of our government. One of the most common occurrences when doing high school assemblies across the country is that students will come up to us, pour out their heart, and tell us the hard things that they have to deal with day after day. Then after meeting their parents, it becomes clear as to what the problem is and who it was that laid out the obstacles for their kids to try and get over. What kind of tracks are you laying for yours to follow in? A father started for his office early one morning after a light fall of snow. Turning, he saw his 2-year-old boy endeavoring to put his tiny feet in his own great footprints. "Go on, I's a-comin', Papa, I's a-comin', yite in your tracks." The father caught the boy in his arms and carried him to his mother. He then proceeded to start for the office. His habit had been to stop on the way to the bar for a glass of liquor. "Go on, I's a-comin', Papa, I's a-comin', yite in your tracks." As he drove up to the bar that morning, he seemed to hear that sweet voice saying, "I's a-comin', Papa, yite in your tracks." He stopped, he hesitated, he looked the future squarely in the face, and he knew within himself that he could not afford to make any tracks that he would be ashamed or sorry to have his little boy walk in. He drove away, never to return to the bar again. The Bible says in Proverbs 22:6, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Now let me show you what our founding forefathers established in elementary schools from our nation's inception. Here's Noah Webster, soldier in the American Revolution, a legislator and a judge. He helped with the language of the Constitution. As an educator, Noah Webster helped found Amherst College and authored scores of school textbooks, including the famous dictionary that bears his name today. He was called the schoolmaster to America. In 1783, he introduced the elementary spelling book. It was used as a speller for over 150 years in our country. He said, "The Christian religion is the most important and one of the first things that children under a free government ought to be instructed. No truth is more evident in my mind that the Christian religion must be the basis of any government intended to secure the rights and privileges of a free people." Noah Webster taught students, "The brief exposition of the Constitution of the United States will unfold to young persons the principles of Republican government, and our citizens should easily understand that the genuine source of correct Republican principles is the Bible, particularly in the New Testament or the Christian religion." He goes on, "The moral principles and precepts contained in the scriptures ought to form the basis of all of our constitutions and laws. All of the miseries and evils which men suffer from, vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from the despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible. First graders were asked such questions in American schools. What is the fifth commandment? What is required in the fifth commandment? What is forbidden in the fifth commandment? What is the reason annexed to the fifth commandment? Which only lines up with what James Madison, the father of our Constitution, rightly stated. We have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. We have staked the future of all of our political institutions upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves, according to the 10 Commandments of God. Some of the things taught in public schools through William Holmes McGuffey, who was the university president, professor. His readers sold over 122 million copies in the first 75 years. McGuffey has been titled the schoolmaster of the nation. His lesson books had such lessons as the character of Jesus Christ, the golden rule, extract from the Sermon on the Mount, Solomon's wise choice, the goodness of God, the gospel invitation, the Christian light and hope, awake Zion, and on prayer. Such spelling words for elementary schools in America: contumelious, ichthyology, bronchotomy, loquacious, mendacity, armigerous, vertiginous, oleaginous, acanthus. Noah Webster warned long ago, the education of youth should be watched with the most scrupulous intention. It is much easier to introduce an establishment of an effectual system than to correct by penal statutes the ill effects of a bad system. The education of youth lays a foundation on which both law and gospel rest for success. Proven elements of a sound education in America: religion, morality, and knowledge should be instilled at school, home, church, and communities. And who better to bring the hammer down than the great reformer Martin Luther? He said, "I would advise no man to send his child where the Holy Scriptures are not supreme. Every institution that does not unceasingly pursue the study of God's Word becomes corrupt. I greatly fear that the schools, unless they teach the Holy Scriptures diligently and impress them on the young students, are wide gates to hell."
Now, before we get started on My War Part 2, you first have to remember that freedom is not free. Someone had to fight, to bleed, and to die for the freedoms that we now possess as Americans. The oath in which our veterans say before they serve our country goes as follows: I, my name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and that means enemies here at home, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I'm about to enter, so help me God. Again, remember that freedom was not given to do what you want to do. Freedom is given to do what you ought to do. One more important bit of information. Daniel Webster said of the Constitution for which men bled, fought, and died for, he goes on and says, "Hold on, my dear friends, to the Constitution and to the republic for which it stands, because miracles do not cluster, and what has happened once in 6,000 years may not happen again. Hold on to the Constitution, for if the American Constitution should fail, there will be anarchy throughout the world."